This is the third video in a series showing the gameplay from the Modern Challenge that took place on the 29th of September, in which I finished top 4 playing my build of 4-color Keruga Omnath, which you see in front of you here. This video will cover the gameplay and my play-by-play commentary for each of the games in round 3. If you missed the previous round's gameplay, please check out the playlist linked in the description of the video. Also, the deck list and the free sideboard guide are linked in the video description too, so go check that out as well. With all that said, let's get on to the games. Play. Opponent reveals a Gigantha the Wellspring, so as before, this could represent either Ruby Storm, Domain Zoo, or one of the energy decks. The hand is a reasonable keep. I have a lot of coverage for the energy and Domain Zoo decks. With Storm, I can cover a Ral, but a Ruby Medallion could get me pretty good here. But I decided to keep it. We can try and find something. The Misty Rainforest, Surveillance, and the opponent reveals a Ragavan, a Mountain, which means that it's one of the energy or Domain Zoo decks. I keep a Leyline Binding on top of the Surveillance and Shock in the Temple Garden with the intention to use Leyline Binding on the Ragavan. Pretty straightforward here, just Leyline Binding on Ragavan. Okay, we're presented with the first real decision of the game. Everything up to this point has been pretty routine. There's a couple of plays here. So I could just Flage the Ajani. I could play Teferi and bounce the cat token. I could bounce the cat token with Teferi and Solitude now. Those are the most realistic options. So when I say Solitude, I mean Solitude the Ajani after bouncing the cat token with the Teferi. In this situation, you almost always prefer to bounce the token with Teferi and not use the Flage on the Ajani. And here's the reason. So you have the Solitude. So they try and flip it by playing a second Ajani. You have something to respond to kill the Ajani. So the only concern here is how to remove this token. If you Flage the Ajani, the problem with that play is that you're still taking 2 damage. I know you gain 3 life, but from my experience, the attack from the tokens really adds up. And you really just want to get rid of these incidental creatures and locking in the equity from the card draw of the Teferi as early as possible. You notice that I fetched the Plains with the Windswept Teeth. The other consideration is we want to be able to play around Blood Moon, and that involves actually making sure that anything that's currently not castable under a future Blood Moon is cast. So you're using all the cards that you can. Flage is still castable under a Blood Moon, at least from the hand, with this current mana that I have. So that again reinforces the attractiveness of making the Teferi bounce token play and then waiting to see if they do something with the Ajani. Like try and flip it so we have the Solitude ready. So yep, Fairy Bounce token, and we draw Fire Ice, which is nice. So if there's any Ocelot Pride stuff going on, the next turn we untap, we can at least kill it. And a token. And there's another decision I make. So I didn't draw the 4th land. And they're attacking the Teferi with the Ajani. This means that because there's the potential of either just straight up Blood Moon or a Amp Raptor, or say like a Guide of Souls into Amp Raptor, so that gets them 3 energy for the flip. I want to do this, even if the Teferi gets removed here with a burn spell. After all of this, because then I'm at least forcing them to use up their mana here. I'm tying up their mana in a less profitable way for them. And I get to keep this on board. Say they have Bloodmoon anyway. I get to keep this on board and try and just keep upticking it. And I can already defend the Teferi somewhat with the Fire Ice. I believe this is the correct play. Whereas letting this die now, I think makes it way too easy for them. And we can afford the resources here. It's kind of tough. This is usually kind of a tough decision, but I think this is the correct decision just because I need to just get one more turn here. So they remove it. Yeah, that's fine. And Static Prison. Okay, yeah, this worked out really well. And now we're pretty insulated against Blood Moon, at least. We can at least cast it to Teferi. Yeah, Ajani on the... Not Ajani, Plage on the Ragavan. It's pretty straightforward. Now bounce Leyline Binding with the Teferi. Yep, they just hit my Teferi with their Flage. And here we get Stomping Ground, because we want to cast this Endurance. But we also want a view to cast our Flage. So we need double red here. That's why we don't get Lush Vertical. You hold the Endurance until end step, because they might Surveil. But if they untap with this fetch still up, then you just Endurance in their upkeep. Do Endurance now. Just to play around anything like random stuff like main deck Reprieve. I don't think they play it, but you never know. Yeah, they have the ring. That's fine, we have to Leyline Binding. Okay. So I make this play where I leave up the mana for the Leyline Binding, but I also cast the Flage. Targeting itself. And there's 2 reasons why I do this. One, I want to get a board state going, and it actually doesn't cost me anything here, because I fetch Shock, but the Flage gives me back to life anyway. And 2, they're tapped out, so I can afford to gain some life. They don't have a bolt up to kill it when I do this. And actually, there's a 3rd reason. I have the Leyline Binding. So even if they like Static Prison this, it's not so bad. It's actually not so bad if they Static Prison this anyway. Because I'm banking on drawing future resources. And that clears a Static Prison. So yeah, just making sure you have to get the opportunity, even if this is like technically no value, in a sense, because you're not targeting anything they have. It's still good to do this because you need to develop a board state as soon as possible, and you need to develop the pressure. Opponent's still holding up the ring. Aware of the binding that's potentially in our hand, that is in our hand. And we hit ring with binding. We have another ring. Looks of it, yep. That's fine. We have the second binding. Better to just use the binding now, because this Deshaun's type binder could instead catch an Amp Raptor. Because right now, Wing isn't too scary with the Flage. So they get back, say, with the Static Prison, it's not too bad. We can just try to tempo them out. But an Amp Raptor could present a Blood Moon. Could get another ring, obviously, as well. But I think Blood Moon is what we're more scared of here, because we're not quite well equipped to deal with it yet. Yeah, Flage. Them aiming it at the Flage that I have suggests that they could have a Lightning Bolt or a follow-up Flage, the two Flages, perhaps. That's my read. We got the two rings. Sometimes the Boros energy deck runs 3 rings. Typical list, I think, run 2. It's varied. But we got most of their rings. So I don't need to hold up this Deshaun's type binder for future ring. I don't think, or at least it's unlikely I need to in the immediate future of this game. So I'm gonna Deshaun's type binder this Flage trigger on my Flage, so I can try and tempo them out, make sure my clock is preserved here. Yeah, that's indeed what I do. And if all goes well, I have a clock that is gonna kill them in 2 turns. But they have the bolt, we already have the read on that. So that's fine. Yep, lightning bolt. Still a pretty good clock here. Play the Omnath, obviously, after attacks, after combat. Yeah, I choose not to use the Fire Ice here to ice anything. So a temptation might be to ice this Arena Glory. But if they say draw fetch, they cast the Flage with Arena Glory, so give it haste. It's better actually just to ice the Flage after it's gone out of the graveyard, because at least then you're trying to draw into an out to it after they've cleared their graveyard. Whereas if you just tap this, they Flage, but they still have the Flage, but you actually gained nothing in a sense, since you didn't make them exert this, because at least this is a commitment of mana for 2 turns if you let them use the Arena Glory. Supposedly they could escape the Flage, but they cannot this time. Which means we're pretty free. Yeah, I just played the Giganta they had earlier, and we can ice for game. Ice Giganta for game here, and that's GG. Because the Flage trigger kills the Ocelot Pride on attack, and we have exactly 10 damage. So it's a pretty straightforward game. Managed to deal with 2 rings without drawing our own, because we had the Leyline bindings, the timely Leyline bindings. Some decisions here, like playing the Teferi to bounce the token, was probably the most important one, and it's usually correct. and we won that game. On to game 2. 2. Before I start the game, I just want to explain the sideboard plan for this deck against the Boros Energy matchup. There's a 1-card sideboard. You just board out 1 Endurance for 1 Cosmic Rebirth. And there's 3 reasons for this. 1, Teferi Time Raveler is just much more important because of the presence of Blood Moon and the One Ring. Against Blood Moon, Teferi is a temporary out. Potentially you can sneak in an Omnath if it's like very late in the game. You draw Teferi, you out the Blood Moon. Sneak through the Omnath, and then you can essentially lock in the value of that card before another Blood Moon comes down. Teferi also bounces the One Ring, and it's pretty important to prevent your opponent from having a turn drawing multiple cards off the ring as easily as possible. And keeping all 4 Teferis in the deck is the best way to do that. It also digs you into the potential permanent out to the One Ring, or at least a more permanent out in the form of Leyline Binding. So it's pretty significant, more significant than the Endurance. You might think that Endurance is better because it's a blocker and it clears a Flage. If you have access to your mana, and if you don't get overwhelmed by the ring, Flage is not that much of a problem. You have outs for it. You can let them escape it. So that 1 less Endurance is not that big a deal. But the 1 less Teferi is much more of a bigger deal. The second reason is that Teferi is actually just better against what they're doing with their creatures. So bouncing the Ajani tokens, as you saw in the previous game. But also, it can bounce stuff like Leyline Binding, and it can bounce stuff like Solitudes. So the bouncing is actually just retooling your creatures as well is very important here. The third reason is actually to do with Cosmic Rebirth itself. So Plains Island is a temporary out to Blood Moon through Teferi. Plains Forest also becomes a temporary out against a Blood Moon with a Teferi in the graveyard, which is very, very easy to do because you bounce something, they usually attack it or kill it with a Flage or a Burn Spell, and it's in the graveyard, so Cosmic Rebirth can target it. So that means 2 basic land configurations. Say you don't have one of the forest or islands, gives you an out to Blood Moon much quicker. You don't take out any of the cards. You don't take out Elesh Norn. You don't see it in this match, but in the next match, round 4, Elesh Norn is very, very important. And it's generally very good against energy because you can cast it off a single planes. So it's actually how you solo a Blood Moon game, even against the One Ring active. Okay. So I'm on the draw. I keep a solid 7. I have Force of Vigor to cover a Blood Moon. I have Solitude to cover an early Ragavan. They don't seem to have the Ragavan, obviously, because it's a Plains. But that was nice consideration to have this Solitude to out whatever creature they could play without having to wait a turn. Say if we had a Fire Ice instead, it would have been a bit worse. Elesh Norn as a late game plan if we do have the opportunity to go big, but I think we're on the draw, so I think we eventually pitch this. And then Leyline Binding to out the One Ring, or actually any other creature we could have. 3 lands. Surveil Land to find the 4th land, essentially here. And Arid Mesa actually is really important because it can fetch a Plains. So we don't even necessarily need to use this Force of Vigor to out Blood Moon. That's always actually a really nice consideration, since you can trap them in their own Blood Moon. They can't escape a Flage if they don't have the second Plains. So sometimes you don't even want to destroy their Blood Moon, you want to destroy like a static prison on your ring or other stuff like that. Yeah, the Force of Vigor has a lot of targets in this matchup outside of the Blood Moon. Static Prison, Goblin Bombardment. Very important targets. Usually the Guy's Souls. We play the Thundering Falls because we want to save these fetches to potentially fetch basics. So this will be Plains on the Arid Mesa and Island from the Flood Strand to give us the most options. I make a mistake here. I should have pitched the Eleshnorn to the Solitude to exile the Guy's Souls while the Onslaught part was still on the stack. Now they have an extra energy. They don't need to. The reason you kill Guy's Souls this early is because even if I Solitude, they're going to gain life anyway. If I don't Solitude, they will gain life. But killing this as early as possible means that they don't get the extra energy from the token generation. And that's important because if they can Amp Raptor next turn, say I didn't make this mistake, they'd only have not killing it before the Onslaught Pride goes on board, the Amp Raptor only has 2 energy. Of course, I kill it now. And that means the Amp Raptor also still only has 3 energy. So this prevents the ring from coming down very early. And that's important, because say they have the 4th energy. Say I decide not to kill this at all, whatsoever. They get the 4th energy. That means if they flip a ring off a potential Amp Raptor, I have to use Leyline Binding on it. And I can't use the Fire Ice to kill the Ocelot Pride. That's the reason why we exile the Guy's Souls now. We should have exiled earlier, but you know, it is what it is. And now I can fetch Plains with the Arid Mesa. And get rid of this Ocelot Pride. I think this was also technically a mistake. I should have maybe done this main phase in my turn because of what happens now. Because post-board they have reprieves. And yeah, I shouldn't have given them that for free. It's not the end of the world. I was thinking we hold it because if they dash Ragavan, I can get the 2-for-1 there. But I guess this is also still fine. Because it's just 1 extra token. And I still get to kill the Ocelot Pride. Yes, they've got souls. They're going quite a bit on this turn. Yeah, so they commit a card just to make this Ragavan fly. Not too bad of a play. You do need to get the damage in against me, otherwise you just let me dirtle too much. I got the island, which is nice, because now I have a bit less insurance against the Blood Moon. But the Flage into the graveyard is really nice here, because now I can out the Ragavan quite cleanly. Very little cost. I think I'm okay with this. Yeah, they hit face. They think they can race the Flage, which is not incorrect. Say they have like the ring in the upcoming turn. And I choose to go face with this Flage because from the way they played, I think they're not going to block with this cat token and get the damage in, and the Solitude's going to get the value from exiling the Guy's Souls and then blocking the cat token. And as you can see here, just having the 1 endurance isn't that big of a detriment, since we had the Leyline Binding anyway. There's several outs to Flage in this deck. Yeah, we play the ring. Just really try and lock up the game. Yeah, when they fetch, that's when you endurance. Even if we didn't see a fetch here, they just have a land. It's not that big of a problem. Because we have the leyline binding for the fletch. And then we would actually have had game. I think my opponent makes a mistake here. They think I have full domain for the 1-mana leyline binding, but I don't. Because they just draw on their turn. I'm not sure how much the difference that would have made. We're untapping into a ring. And we have the fire ice, so they can't really sneak anything past me. And yeah, that was 2-0. And as you can see, we have pretty much all the cards to beat Boros Energy. I think most 4-color Omnath builds are fine against Boros Energy. But this matchup specifically is a big reason to play 4-color Keruga, or at least my list. Boros Energy matchups usually quite easy. Just gotta be careful here and there. Respect Blood Moon. Learn to think about beating the other enchantments as well. So, recognizing the importance of Force of Vigor. Cards like that.